And so tonight I'm unpacking the use of the template. And then the next time around, I want to really explore the HSR process. I find there's a lot of confusion maybe as to the HSR process and all the pieces of it, etc. So I want to kind of launch you into 899. That's really my goal. So next time around, if I can help to move you in the direction of your dissertation phase, then I think it might be helpful. But this is fairly simple. I'm going to do something real quick here just by way of introducing it. Let me come over here to, and I'm using two monitors, so I have to make sure they sync. So this is just kind of a way to indicate to you a bit more about the schedule when it comes to this whole area of the proposal. So basically, you have a template, and there are two versions of it. I'm going to look at both of them tonight. The template is pre-formatted for Word and for Turabian. Now, I know Frederick is a Mac user. He's probably not the only one in the class who is a Mac user. The problem that we've had with Blackboard, and we're getting ready to bail out of Blackboard, I'm sure you probably know, is that Blackboard is kind of old school. Blackboard is not designed, if you post anything using a Mac computer, it has no idea what to do with it. And so, I always have to contact a student and say, you need to give it to me in a form that Blackboard understands and that I understand. I have a PC myself, but my son is a big Mac user. And so I'm aware that you can have Office 365 for Mac, or you can have Word for Mac or whatever, and you can easily make it work. There's no reason why you need to do any converting of a file. And so when I say it's pre-formatted for Word, I mean it's not pre-formatted for Pages, to make it simple. And it's pre-formatted for Turabian 9th edition. And it has, in fact, an automated table of contents in it that will, unless you go in and change something in the template, will record. And of course, you all probably know how to do the Word automated table of contents. I'll show that to you again tonight as well. Then unless you go and change the formatting of a heading or something, the table of contents is going to be there for you. You don't have to worry about, oh, gee, I need to switch from the lowercase Roman numeral to an Arabic numeral down at the bottom center. It does that for you. So you don't have to worry about that at all. And so there is a blank version that you can use either to compose inside of, or you can just copy and paste inside of the blank template. Now, one of the things you need to know is, and this is a Microsoft Word issue, if you copy and paste from a Word document, whatever formatting you were using in Word just comes into the template. It doesn't change the template's formatting, but for instance, the default settings are all wrong in Word when it comes to doing a dissertation. So an example of that is when the line spacing option adds 8 points after every time you hit an enter key at the end of every paragraph or end of every heading or whatever it might be. And so it's never perfectly double spaced because you have that extra stuff going on at the end of every paragraph and at the end of every heading. It also automatically does a tab for you, a half-inch tab, which means that your heading is going to be tabbed over a half-inch, so it's not true centered. And so, one of the things that that's why I gave you a lot of Microsoft Word tutorial information in course resources. All those Word pre-formats have to be turned off, so you can be totally in control of how you format what your Word document looks like. And so I always like to mention that, because if you compose inside of Word, unless you've done all that work to turn off the default settings so that you're in complete control of what it looks like, when you copy it and then paste it in the template, those will come over, which means you'll have an extra 8 points after every paragraph, etc. It's easy enough to fix in the Turabian. You just go in and change. You have to change it for every paragraph. And so that's something to keep in mind. Occasionally, a student will actually compose inside of the template. And when you do that, you don't have to worry about anything after that. It's kind of rare, though, for a student to do that. So we have a blank template that we will look at. We have an annotated template with explanatory notes, which is very, very helpful when it comes to even understanding the whole structure, once again, of the proposal. You remember I gave you kind of an early presentation on the structure of the proposal, because it kept coming up when we were working on the summary of the literature together. So it's already been, I'm not going to repeat that tonight. It's usually in this session that I do that, but I'm not going to repeat that because it's there for you. The annotated template, it provides explanatory notes, and of course, the blank, I've already mentioned something about the blank. So here's the schedule. And it's very easy for us to meet our schedule if we've been kind of fussy all along. So here we are in week 9. We've already been spending some time. We have really worked on that lit summary. Now we're starting to work on the BTH foundations. We're working on that together so that we don't have to wait till the last minute to do all of that work. So it actually makes the schedule quite doable. So in week 12, the first draft of the entire proposal, of course, the biggest pieces, as you know, are the lit summary and the BTH foundations, with some introductory and some concluding sections. So your first draft of your proposal is due in week 12. Week 13, we just spend time revising the first draft, because we're looking down the road and we say, wow, the semester is going to end before we know it. So I need to go ahead and really, if I'm going to finish this process, which I know you will, then we're actually going to take a week to work on revising the first draft of the proposal. Then week 14, we will complete first draft revisions. This is you and me working together in a partnership. And again, my goal is not to frustrate you, but to say, you still need to do a little more work with your footnotes or whatever. It's to make sure that when Dr. Flynn sees it, he's going to say, yes, this qualifies them to go forward into 899 with the chair. So we'll complete our draft revisions in week 14, and then week 15, the final draft is due. Now, as you know, spring break ends Saturday at 11:59 p.m., April the 29th. And so that is week 15 for us. And we can't, for the registrars in control at that point, so we literally can't accept any work after 11:59 p.m. on the 29th of April. That's it. We're done. We've been working real hard. I'm sure it's all going to look very, very good. I have to tell you a little bit of a story. Julie would know this person, but I won't call her name. Somebody it was in the summer, Julie, or it was in the fall, she contracted COVID like the last month of the semester. And it was like it just wiped her out. And it's hard to focus your mind, it's hard to get some good work done. And so it was in the fall. And so I had to give her, whatever we ended up arranging, probably an incomplete. I'm sure Dr. Flynn gave her an incomplete. But I said, if you're willing to keep working during Christmas break, I can get your proposal to Dr. Flynn before the deadline in the spring break, when there's a withdrawal deadline. And I think you'll still get credit for it from the fall and move on immediately. It really worked that way for her. I was just guessing. Thank the Lord I wasn't guessing wrong. So there is some flexibility, but not when it comes to reporting final grades. Faculty has to report the following Wednesday. All final grades have to be in. by 5 o'clock in the afternoon. Actually, I'll be in Virginia Beach then. So that's the registrar. She's in control at that point. So this is our schedule. It's a very doable schedule, especially since we have been working hard already on pieces here in the process. So I'm gonna stop sharing this, and I'm gonna call up. I think this is the blank. Let me take a look at it. The front page looks alike. Yeah, so I'm going to do a new share. I'm not going to do the blank. I'm going to do the annotated. This is the annotated, and both of these are in course resources. This is the annotated template. Now it shows you what it should look like, because once again, remember, it's formatted for Turabian 9th edition. So even when it comes to the title, you remember the title is not your research a question. It's not the statement of the problem question. It's a shorter version. It's the title, and you will give it twice, but the formatting will be different each time. But the template shows the formatting. So if you will stick with it, and don't assume you need to go in and do something else. And don't feel like it's cheating in order to just take advantage of all of this. This is fantastic. And so the title on the title page is centered, bold, upper and lower case, and it shows you just fill in, wherever you're at, your name, where you're at, the date. Go ahead and give it your copyright, of course. And then we come to the signature page. Now, once again, see, you've got the title, but this time it's all caps. It's still bold and centered, but now it's all caps. And sometimes if that has to go down to a second line, it will. We only need 2 signatures from your committee, ultimately. Your chair is the first reader. Your second reader is what we would usually refer to as your project mentor. Somebody who qualifies to be a resource person for you. Occasionally, we will add a third chair. Now, I'm not doing that anymore unless the student agrees that he or she wants a third chair, because it just adds complexity a little bit. When I was earlier in the program, I liked adding a full-time faculty member who was a PhD as a third chair, because they're going to hold your feet in the fire until you're going to say, why in the world? Well, I said, I knew this would be good for you. And so I don't always just automatically do that anymore. If a student has a preference for a third chair, and that would usually be somebody from the full-time faculty in the School of Divinity, then we'd have a third. And it's a signature page, although this document your dissertation doesn't require actual physical signatures, just an indication of who they are. The abstract comes next. And of course, the abstract is the first page where there is a pagination, centered at the bottom, lower case Roman numerals, but it's all in the template for you. You don't have to worry about switching back and forth, etc. Julie, you raised your hand.
Can you hear me?
I can, yes, ma'am.
On the previous page?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So it has, I'll go back up a little bit. It has month and year. Do we leave that blank for right now?
Yes, because this is the same, we would call it front matter, that will be in your total dissertation. Put your name in there, but don't worry about wondering when if you're real prophetic, I suppose you can put a copyright for your dissertation, but I think it's okay to put your name there.
Okay, so just leave the date, and then change that when you get closer to when you know.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay. So the abstract, 150 to 350 words, and there is a word count. This is the only piece that has a word count. Notice it's all caps. It's not bold. in the abstract. It's still front matter, but this is the first one that actually has a page number. One paragraph, concise. You know, you all understand abstract, you're veterans. So I don't know of any doctoral dissertation, doctoral student that will have fewer than 150 words. But if it's more than 350, especially if it's significantly more, there may be another request for summarizing. The acknowledgement section, and once again, this is still front matter. So it's all caps, it's centered, it's not bold. This is the only piece where you can use first person. And so you're acknowledging whoever you want to acknowledge, your mom and your grandfather and whoever you want to, try to pick a. And by the way, there is still a problem with this formatting, so I want to point this out to you. I think it's fixed in the blank. The margin is 1 page, not 1.5 pages. It used to be 1.5 pages because it ended up being printed and bound. Dissertations are no longer printed and bound. They're published on ProQuest digitally. So it just moved to 1 page as a result. I noticed that and I wanted to make sure I said that. Acknowledgements no longer than 1 page. Now, this is not relevant yet, probably for you, but for your dissertation, if you want to then have a list of abbreviations, a glossary of terms, whatever you think you might be helpful in, it's still front matter. You can add another page for this stuff. For your proposal, it's probably not relevant at all. If it is, that's fine. I find that especially in some cases, I know the work that I saw Kyle doing, there could be a glossary would be helpful, but Kyle, I wouldn't worry about that with a proposal. If your chair wants you to do that for your dissertation, that would be fine. Because if there are terms that are technical but also not readily known by folks, sometimes that can be helpful. So I would wait till the dissertation. See, you still got you got pagination. Table of contents is automatically there. And I think all of you know how once you get done with your proposal, see, this only reflects the numbers of the template. But once you get done with your proposal and it's all done, you want to go in and update the table of contents. You all know how to do that, don't you? So you click up here, you just click anywhere at the top. It says update the table. Either the page numbers only, the entire table. I would update the page numbers only. Click OK, and your new page numbers automatically appear. So you don't have to worry about any of this. And you know, under the subheadings, or these are, of course, under the chapter, the main headings are appearing with an indentation, working bibliography at the end. This is all already set up for you. So if you've ever had to do an automated table of contents in Word, you know, this reflects how you've done the heading formatting in Word. And if you do it the right way, it automatically appears. So I would not mess with the table of contents. It's really hard. If you mess it up, it's hard to fix it. So basically you have to go back and erase it and then try it again. It's best just to leave it alone, frankly, because it's designed, except for updating the words, you know, click up here, update the table, update the words. That you're going to do at the end. But other than that, I wouldn't mess with the table of contents. And again, in your dissertation, after the table of contents, you can also add some front matter, list of figures, tables, once again, abbreviations, glossary. That can come as part of the front matter as well. Still the pagination. Now, when you go to the next one, the pagination changes, right, to Arabic numerals. Well, it's already changed. The template changes that for you. So you don't have to worry, oh, okay, I need to put in a section break. I hope this works. I think I may lose my second blessing if it doesn't work. What's going to be going on? And so it's okay to treat your proposal as chapter 1. even though it isn't chapter 1. But if we do our work properly, and I like to tell adjuncts, especially, I had this conversation I mentioned earlier today, that Dr. Flynn has approved the proposal. Unless there's something that is obviously problematic, and that might be a formatting issue or something, just leave it alone. It's best to just approve it as chapter 1, but it's still, the chair has the authority. The chair needs to be doing that together. And so chapter 1, introduction to the project, and these are the settings. So the heading settings in Word is what brings it up into the table of contents. And so overview, of course, is your first. Now, what I did is I went into an old proposal that was completed by Braunberger, an older student, and I just wanted to say, okay, how much time did he take on this stuff? This is, of course, part of chapter 1. All of this becomes part of chapter 1. His overview was 288 words, which less than a page, maybe 2 paragraphs. But it's the overview to the proposal as a whole. So you're not introducing any piece of the proposal, you're providing an overview of the entire proposal. And then the statement of the problem. This is the place where you will give the statement of the problem question with a little bit of context. Now, heading 1, all heading 1 is, and don't include this. Occasionally, I will get a proposal draft that will leave the heading 1. No, we don't need the heading 1 in your heading. This is just the way to indicate how heading 1 ought to be, formatted. Statement of the problem. So that's when you're going to actually give. And this is heading 2, doesn't need a second heading necessarily. This is statement of the problem. It's just the indication of how the second level heading is formatted. So give your statement of the problem question, provide a little bit of context. I remember when I was looking at Braunberger, he spent a lot of time to provide context. He probably had 2.5 pages. I don't think it needs to be 2.5 pages. Because again, these early sections are quite short. Once again, formatting, and this is, you would think you all are veterans. So you would think Turabian 9th edition, you're probably dreaming about Turabian 9th edition at night, formatting. Oh my God, one of the problems with Turabian is that some things are flexible on purpose, and it's going to say, please consult your school as to how they want it done. And so every school has to decide specifically, okay, this is how I want it done. So in the School of Divinity, the number is superscripted old style, and Word automatically does the superscript number. So I think we've chosen to prefer that because you don't have to go in and edit it. The number is superscripted. There's a 1/2 inch indentation before the first line always, and then insert an additional line after each footnote. All right, so it's pretty simple. I think footnotes always require a little bit of editing on your part. Period at the end of every footnote, this basic stuff. But Microsoft Word is not going to do all of this for you. So for instance, it's not going to insert a line between footnotes. So you'll have to go back around. Do you all know how to edit the footnotes easily? I wonder if this will let me do it. This is a trick. You all ready? You go into view. Is it going to let me do it? You have to go over to the draft view, go up to references, and show notes, and all you get are footnotes. And you can easily go in and edit all of them, and you don't have to worry about, okay, which one was that? What page was that on? Etc. I think it was Pastor Ross who decided not to use IBID, and I really liked his rationale. I think it was you, Ross, where Ross said, when I go through, if I bump anything, it changes the IBIDs, it puts them out of order. And then I have to go back in and put the short version again of the note, etc. You don't have to use IBID. I mean, you can, but you don't have to. So that's kind of a trick as to how to get to the notes only. I'm going to change my view back to print layout. And so statement of the problem, it could be a page and a half. I don't think it needs to be 2.5 pages. Depends on how much context you want to provide. This again is just a way of indicating a third level heading, aligned to the left, italics and bold. So the next section is the rationale for doing the ministry. And again, I did this on the presentation with a little more detail that I provided you. This asks for something specific from you. So do keep that in mind. You want to answer these 4 questions. Why is the researcher interested in this specific topic? Why is there a need to solve this problem? Of course, in your context. Who would benefit from this research? The church, ministry, leadership, other people, because you're in a unique context. And then number 4, what gap in the research is your research addressing? As you know, a research gap is simply you're filling a hole. No one else has ever done what you're doing exactly. And so you're making a unique contribution to the literature, really, with your dissertation. So Braunberger spent maybe a page and a half on that. I think he could have spent a little bit more, but a page and a half is fine. Then the next section is limitations and assumptions. The purpose, and you will find this in every formal academic writing, the purpose is to draw boundary lines around what you're doing. So you're clear on the scope, but you're clear as to what it is that you're not attempting to do. It tells Dr. Flynn, for instance, whether or not your project is doable, whether or not it's realistic. Occasionally, we will get a proposal that would require a longitudinal study of 2 or 3 years. And so I will want to tell a student, do you want to spend 2 or 3 years doing this ministry project? Well, no, I'd rather not. Well, then you're going to have to focus it more. You're going to have to simplify it a bit. And it's okay. Don't feel like you're not doing good research if you don't do a longitudinal study. And so this section just creates the sense that you know what you're doing and what you're not going to do. It defines your focus specifically. And there is a requirement. I think it's okay, frankly, to just use the wording of this requirement at the end of this section, where it says one assumption is that your project will be undertaken from an evangelical perspective in consonance with the statements of faith as they appear in the Regent School of Divinity catalog. That's kind of it's kind of a formal statement, but we actually are looking for it at the end of this section. So don't feel like you've got to elaborate on it, just make the statement. Of course, the summary of the literature, you are already, my goodness sakes, you are masters of the literature summary, and we really had to unpack all of that. What exactly do we mean by scholarly literature? Because this is very unique as compared to the next section. Braunberger only gave us 12 pages, which is fine. He listed 20 sources. Dr. Flynn is always looking for a minimum of 10 pages, a minimum of 10 sources. It's pretty easy to do more than that. But that's the summary of the literature. Some of you are doing basically most of chapter 2, and my note to you is I'm convinced that Dr. Flynn will appreciate reading it. I appreciate reading it. But your chair is going to ask you to trim it down, because chapter 1 is the introduction. And then you're going to write chapter 2, and then you're going to write chapter 3. So you don't need to do all that work a couple of times. You only need to do it once. And so the summary of the literature is very important. And this is what we're working on now. Biblical, theological, and historical foundation. I think it's more complicated because, as you know, in our discussions, there are literally 3 academic disciplines involved. So biblical studies is a discipline, Christian theology is a discipline. Of course, that includes practical theology, and church history is its own discipline. So it's almost like you're writing 3 sections, but it's really one. We're looking for it to be one section because it's going to be one chapter. And so what does the Bible say? What's relevant theology? It needs to be a relevant theology in your context, ideally, although it's okay to give some background again. I loved what Julie did with the Wesleyan quadrilateral, which is a great example of how to do that. And some examples from church history, ideally one from more ancient church history, older church history, and then one from a more contemporary situation, particularly if there is an example from your own tradition. Braunberger wrote 18 pages and gave 16 sources. Now his is his is a proposal that was approved. So I think that's why it's valuable to see that he got a little more, he got more excited with this section of the proposal, but there are 3 whole areas. Now remember, you're going to be expanding that. It's not unusual for chapter 3 to be longer than chapter 2. Not too long. I think I mentioned to you once, I had one of our great students that completed his whole program. His first draft of chapter 3 he sent me was 126 pages. I said, no. Chapter 3 cannot be 126 pages. Now, what he did is he got so excited, he got so anointed, he started to preach. Now, he's preaching in chapter 3, and he did everything but have an altar call. And so I said, you can take the preaching out. I'm happy that you're passionate. I really am. You're excited about all of this stuff. This is very, very good. But you can take, you can take the preaching out, take the personal exhortations out. You don't have to criticize folks who disagree with you. Keep it scholarly, although it is very specific and unique to both the proposal, but specifically to chapter 3. Then you're going to do some anticipatory methods for analyzing the problem. All of these end up being, again, shorter because you're going to begin to anticipate what you want to do in terms of research instruments, processes that you're going to use to collect data. Because, the big thing in your project then is data collection and then it's data analysis. And once again, you really don't know exactly what that will be until you have an approved HSR application. That defines what it's going to be. But you can anticipate, you could state what you would like it to be, what you anticipate. Again, he's got a little more than a page, maybe a page and a half. That's fine, but it's anticipatory. Once again, and this ends up being chapter 4. Chapter 4, by the way, and the 899 students love for me to tell them that while your chapters 2 and 3 maybe were 30 pages minimum, chapters 4 and 5 will probably be 20 pages. They're shorter because you're just laying out the facts. Chapter 4 more than chapter 5. So results and contributions, the expected results. Now, you don't want to prejudice what you think you're going to find, but you have some suspicions of what you may find. And so this again you're not going to know what it is until you're able to do data analysis. That will become part of chapter 5. He just wrote a page on that. And then evaluation is kind of the so what question. How do you anticipate when you have all the data in front of you? How do you anticipate really crunching those numbers? How are you going to interpret it? What do you think you might find? And so occasionally evaluation tools are helpful, mostly if you're doing a quantitative study. At least a piece of it is quantitative because it requires more specific kinds of technical evaluation. He only did 147 words on this one, so I don't know if he had a lot of faith for his project or what. But again, you're anticipating, you're not reporting yet. That's going to be, these two together will be chapter 5. And then you will have a summary, which is a summary of your entire proposal or your entire chapter 1 ultimately. And that's 2 or 3 paragraphs. His was only 161 words. Again, you're just tying a bow on it at the end. This is not part of chapter 1. This is only part of the proposal, working outline and timeline. You're expecting how long it's going to take you, and hopefully in what order. Now, stuff happens. Again, I have an active duty Marine chaplain who is doing a project right now, and he can't get the admiral to sign off on the HSR application. I mean, we're good with it. Dr. Flynn approved. It's Dr. Flynn, by the way, now, and not Dr. Story who does that. So who knew that it would take his admiral almost a year to approve what had already been approved? It's not like he can, rebel and forget it. I'm going to be in the Air Force. No, he's where he's at. He's got to make it work. But he can write. He's written chapter 2. He can write chapter 3. He can move forward and already be kind of anticipate how he wants to collect the data, etc. So you try to do your best to anticipate how long this whole process is going to take. I like to tell students, on average, students take 3 semesters to do this entire process. HSR application, ministry project, data collection and analysis, dissertation writing, and the defense. It's a lot of work. I actually had a student once said, I think I can do it all in a semester. I said, I don't know that even Jesus could do it in 1 semester, to be quite honest. I mean, there's just too many moving parts, and you're depending on other people to work that fast, and I don't think it can be done. Maybe 2, occasionally 4, but most take 3. It's reasonable to expect that you could do it in 3. Now, nobody's going to hold your feet to your working outline and timeline. They're not going to hold your feet to that and say, well, gee whiz, you missed that by a long ways. It's just, again, another way of Dr. Flynn deciding whether or not, and then ultimately your appointed chair, whether or not you have a reasonable expectation. And then the working bibliography as always. So I'm going to do this other, and then I'm going to find out what questions you have and we can review. It's the blank. Now you have both the annotated template and the blank template in course resources. And this one is formatted correctly. Yes, it's just a 1-page left margin. So everything you just saw, but without the notes and without the underlines, everything else is there. It's just a matter of you putting in your information. Your title, again, is 2 different formatting, for the title, your abstract, and you can literally just, you don't need this, just, get rid of it and put in your abstract, your acknowledgments. And the table of contents. So once again, you will fill in, you will go in here like with the overview. It's already, one of the things that School of Divinity changed, for instance, is that we don't want you to add an extra line before a new heading. It's just one of those things, oh, gee, I've got to go up and I've got to change it from double space to single space, and oh, I forgot to change it back to double space. What in the world's going on? Well, the template does all that for you. So there's consistent single spacing throughout. The up here is where the line spacing, right? The line spacing options are. So it's 0. Usually this says 8 points, and then it wrecks your consistent double spacing. Well, the template just has done all that for you. And so you'll go in here, it's already indented, but there's not an auto indent. See, where you go up to the ruler and you can see if it automatically indented. We had to put an indentation in there, so it's not going to mess up your formatting otherwise. You go back here, it's already indented there, double space, rationale. You just click in, copy and paste if you want. And I recommend, copy and pasting works really well. It's not hard to fix some of the default settings that came through from your original document. But if you will go in and change the line spacing to 0, and you'll eliminate the auto tabs. The auto tab, I think, is also up here. Indent and spacing. And just make sure that there's no automatic tab, line breaks. No, you don't want that. Tabs. There are no tabs. So you just, because if you don't, then Word just does it for you, and then it ends up making life more difficult. Summary of the literature, BTH, methods for analyzing. See how easy it is? Results and contribution, evaluation, summary, working outline, working bibliography. Bibliographies, again, 9th edition Turabian, you all are veterans, so you know that with the footnote, it needs to be a 10-point font, the first line indented. With a bibliography, it needs to be a 12-point font, the first line aligned left, and the second and following, if there are following, indented. You know, it's Turabian. It's not really that difficult. One of the things I like to do is I went through and learned the keyboard shortcuts for Word, which makes it easier to just go, you know, just do Control Tab and it sets it the way I want it, however it is. But I love the template. I don't feel like it's cheating, because former students had to go in manually. They had to insert a section break. They had to change the numbers. Then they had to go in. They had to add a line before a new heading. None of that. And they had to change the page from the upper right to the lower bottom centered. None of that. This is all ready for you, ready to go. And by the way, I find a lot of students, as they're writing, then they're going to write chapter 2. They'll just add on to this template because the whole template is formatted. So they'll just go in and do, okay, chapter 2, and just start typing away and not have to worry about any of that. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to say, oh, this is kind of technical stuff. I realize here's Mr. Z. Do you have any questions? Even though it's very practical, you know, and we want to make it more doable for you. I'd love for you. I find that doctoral students, including yourselves, your research is excellent. Your writing is excellent. If there's ever any kind of a thing that you have to wrestle with, it's formatting issues. Turabian, Microsoft Word. And so the template takes that away, if you will, and you have to remind yourself of Turabian footnotes, Turabian bibliographic entries. But the template takes a lot of that frustration away so that you can focus on research and writing. So do you have any follow-up questions? Kirsten, did your computer freeze?
It did there for a minute in the middle, and I don't know if it was just mine or everybody, but for about 3 minutes maybe I couldn't hear anything, so I just restarted it. My
goodness, did anybody else's computer freeze in the middle? Okay, I'm sorry. I just got my Wi-Fi connection today. The Comcast guy had to come out and hook everything up for me, so it needs to work. I hear your kids, Kirsten. Any questions on the whole idea of the template? And again, it was kind of a quick review also of the structure of the proposal. And your use of the template. Now, don't go in. Occasionally, a student will go into the annotated template and just erase the notes and use it, but it's not formatted as well. The blank one is what's really, really formatted for you well. The annotated one is just there to provide annotation, to provide notes. So don't use it. Be sure you use the blank one only.
So Dr. Asplund, hopefully this is a question that others would benefit from as well. I've already gotten some of the questions, as you know, answered about how fast I can get started on stuff. And all that, and I've moved my time off from 4 weeks. I'm going to take 6 weeks off to try to work on it to see if I can get it done in 2 semesters. But I'm more curious, as we're writing the section on expectations of timing, what kind of lead time do we need towards the end of it, as far as what's the typical lead time to, you know, work with getting results reviewed and getting ready for defense? How much lead time do we have to have in order to execute on those well?
You know, this is not a great answer, Ross, but it is the answer. It depends entirely on your chair. Hopefully you won't get a foot dragging chair. Now, all of our folks are great, you know, they're wonderful. They partner with you. They're not going to do editing. You know, I think I like to tell students, I do a little more editing because it's a learning process in 897. A chair is not going to do any editing. So occasionally a chair will say, I recommend, in fact, it's possible for a chair to require you to have an editor. But they are only doing that to save you a lot of time. What we're going to do, Ross, at the end of 897 is get the HSR process going. There's a training course, the CITI training course that you can do before you do your application. You have the application in front of it. You can't submit the application to Dr. Flynn until you have completed 897. And as soon as, you know, and he's really pretty good. I don't know where I don't think he sleeps, but he's pretty good at saying, okay, this is good stuff. Here is your chair. So as soon as you complete 897 and are enrolled in 899, which the dean's office will do for you, so you don't have to wonder about how am I going to enroll, when should I enroll in 899? Well, you can't until 897. That 897 is a candidacy phase. As soon as the dean's office sees that you've completed that, they will enroll you in 899. But I'd like to see you get a head start on the HSR process. Do the training course. Have the application form in front of you. Begin to fill out the form. And then ultimately, you can't submit the application to Dr. Flynn again until you're enrolled in 899. And then be ready to submit that application to Dr. Flynn. The only time, unless you're active duty military, the only time I've ever seen an application be problematic is if they were attempting to access a vulnerable population. So they wanted to survey, you know, victims of abuse. Well, no, not in a DMIN program. And so, you know, and I try to say that as nicely as I can. It's not my job in 897 to say that. But the only time I've ever seen an application take longer, it was that, okay, you need to go back and change your whole project design. And then it's okay for an 897 student to come back to me and say, I need to change my project design. What do you recommend? You have any ideas for me? And it's pretty easily fixed. But listen, Ross, you can also, I can tell you how your chair is going to have you write chapters 2 and 3. Your chair will say, copy and paste the summary of the literature section from the proposal, paste it into a second document, and fill it out until you're happy with the fact that it's chapter 2. And don't worry about, okay, the chair's going to ask me to shorten what I've got. That's fine. You've got most of chapter 2. Copy and paste it into a separate document. And the same will be true with chapter 3, to copy and paste the BTH Foundation section of the proposal, even if it's 12 pages. Still go paste it into a separate document, begin to expand it, you know, take a little more time to unpack sources, etc., until you've got chapter 3. That can be done before you have permission to begin collecting data. You can anticipate, you all can anticipate that. Not all of you are even wanting to think of that. That'd be a nice nightmare to begin to even try to think of that. But some of you may be in a position where you can do that. Wait till your proposal draft is fairly complete, and then anticipating 899. And once you do that, I think you can go fairly quickly. To be honest, the defense process takes an entire semester, simply because the defense has to be scheduled. Everybody has to be on board. The defense needs to be, developed by the student. And the defense, when I say an entire semester, the defense process only gives you most of the semester, because Josh Nangle needs to be able to publish on ProQuest at least 4 weeks before the end of the semester, which means you don't have a full semester to do everything involved in the defense process, which is fairly complicated. Most of the moving parts are really parts being moved by the chair in partnership with Dr. Flynn at that point in time. So that last piece is really quite intensive, but I think you can anticipate. I'm getting ready to schedule a couple of defenses. I'll schedule them in June. And if we can be done the 1st of August, they'll be done. And I think we can do it. I think we can do it. So you can anticipate the process and get a bit of a head start, I'm convinced.
Can I ask a clarifying question on that?
Yeah.
So basically, if I'm going to try to be done by Christmas, for example, it doesn't matter, even if I was going to try to be done in 3 semesters, I basically have to have all the writing done and all of the data gathered before the end of the semester, before I do the defense, is what you just said. Am I understand that correct?
I think so. I think so, because once again, you will have, your chair will be the only one who can say, okay, chapters 4 and chapter 5 are done and ready to go. Therefore, I'm going to schedule your defense. So, and go ahead and indicate, Ross, when you have an appointed chair, say, I've got a schedule, and of course he'll see it at the end of your proposal. And so I anticipate moving pretty quickly. I'm taking some weeks that will be almost a sabbatical, except I'll be working like crazy. And so if we can do this together, I'm convinced I can get it done. So even if you had to leak over, like for instance, April 29 is the end of the spring semester. So if I've got guys up into May finishing chapters 4 and chapter 5, I think we can still do it. It's just, it's really a partnership at that point between you and your chair. I think Dr. Flynn, if I may anticipate, may end up being your chair, Ross. So he is the ultimate veteran with all of this. Any other questions? I didn't scare you, did I? Nah, you all are great. And it's only Kirsten that's pregnant, so none of you should be having any trouble whatsoever. Z, how you doing, my friend?
Juggling a lot.
I'm telling you, Z is down in California. I don't know how close you are to Kyle, actually, but Californians are all special.
Yeah, I'm juggling a lot.
All right, I appreciate you, man. Z has got the his youth-oriented project, which I see quite a lot lately, and I think it's all. I don't know if I should get all of you together and say, by the way, you all are doing very similar projects, just a different research. The big thing ends up being having a clearly defined research context, so that you don't end up in too broad of a project. And so if you can narrow it down, Ross is consulting, as I recall, 3 experts who will be providing him with data. Well, that's going to be easier. If Ross decided I need 12 experts, well, then, can we narrow it? It's okay to have a project focus, including the context that is narrow, because you're testing an intervention in a specific kind of a research context, and then we'll let others, after you're done doing your work, decide how they may want to apply it to their own situation. You good? How you doing, all of you? I'm going to pray for you, if I may. Any questions? I want to pray for you, and then stop the recording. And next time around, we anticipated a little bit, Ross, but next time around, I'm going to unpack the details of the HSR process. I have found that it's possible for an 897 student to come all the way to the end and then still really not be clear as to how it's going to work now. And so if I can give you a boost on the way to 899, that's what I want to do as well. And that's what we'll do next time around. So let me pray for you. Father, I thank you so much for these great students. Thank you for the vision and the passion that you've given them. Inspiration from your Holy Spirit. You're going to lead them into a pathway that will be so valuable, that will bear rich, rich fruit in their own context, and will bear fruit in a way that will potentially benefit other contexts as well. So I pray that you would strengthen them, encourage them every step along the way, guard and guide their footsteps with your peace. I pray that they would sense your Holy Spirit just giving them ideas along the way, opening up even resources along the way that will benefit what they are doing. I pray that you would strengthen them. Thank you for strength for Kirsten, expecting her baby. We're just trusting you for just a great outcome. And we thank you and praise you for it in advance in Jesus' name. Amen.